Why is there still controversy surrounding Star Wars: The Last Jedi? The latest rally cry from furious fanboys still weeping over the cardinal sins committed by The Last Jedi is an attempt to raise millions of dollars so they can remake the movie the way the fans want. I put fans in quotation marks because I'm not entirely sure that these people should really be referred to as fans of anything. It's been half a year since The Last Jedi was released, and since then, much has happened in the real world that's worth getting upset over. And yet, an insane amount of controversy still swirls around a galaxy far, far away. Whenever the film is mentioned on social media, the comments quickly flood with hate from alleged fans, claiming that Kathleen Kennedy ruined their lives, and that they don't care about Star Wars anymore, though they certainly care enough to endlessly complain about it. Promoted. I had my own issues with The Last Jedi, but come on, it wasn't that bad. No piece of fiction is worth getting so worked up over, and there's absolutely no excuse for the harassment suffered by Kelly Marie Tran and Daisy Ridley, both of whom ended up deleting their social media because of the constant abuse. Let's think about that again. Both of these actresses were chased offline because of the sheer volume of raw hate received purely for their performance in a fiction. And it wasn't some derogatory adaptation of a religious text, but a sequel to a popular cinematic franchise that received mixed audience reviews. What is it, exactly, that this small, but loud, segment of the fanbase finds so obscenely offensive about Episode 8 of the epic space opera? I dove into the darkest corners of the web to find out what the heck their problem is, aside from an absence of physical contact with the opposite sex. Luke Skywalker's death was lame. Let's start with the most obvious, and least controversial point. Luke Skywalker's death was underwhelming, especially considering how massively popular and influential his character is. I half agree with this complaint, as I think we were all expecting Luke to go down with a big bang rather than a half-hearted fade. But the more I thought about it, the more I liked it, especially considering the parallel between Luke and another hero at the end of his journey, Beowulf. I already wrote an article about it, so go read that if you're interested. But many of us were expecting Luke to be the Jedi equivalent of Gandalf the White, a walking deus ex machina who would materialize when all hope seemed lost, and decimate the First Order with a blast of Force lightning from his rectum. Hell, it sounds like Mark Hamill himself was expecting that. If you click the link, Hamill has a fascinating perspective on the parallel between Luke's loss of optimism and the failed aspirations of the baby boomers. But an aging, embittered hero is infinitely more interesting than a demigod do-gooder. That's why Superman movies are always so dull. Regardless, a lot of people just didn't want to see their childhood hero reduced to guzzling green milk from an extraterrestrial sea cow, and we can't really fault them for that. But we're moving past the original, legendary Star Wars protagonists and passing the lightsaber onto a brand new generation, so let's talk about the perceived problems with them. Ree is a Mary Sue. First off, what is a Mary Sue? Definitions vary, but in a nutshell, it's an annoyingly perfect female character who just waltzes in and outshines everyone, without even trying. All the other characters like her and constantly compliment her, unless they are evil. And to be honest, Ree totally fits this definition. She's not the most exciting protagonist, because she never seems to face any obstacles that really challenge her. But it's difficult to see how anyone could be angered by the character, especially considering Daisy Ridley's abundant charisma. So, where does the hate come from? I don't want to pin it purely on her gender, because that seems like an overly simple solution, but it's difficult to view it any other way. Especially considering the fact that Ree is, by design, extremely similar to the beloved Luke Skywalker. Both Jedi leave their small-town planets and quickly become Force experts, with little effort, although Ree exerts even less effort than Luke. Both briefly tilt toward the dark side, but quickly dismiss the temptation, because they are fundamentally good-hearted. The most substantial difference is that Ree hasn't experienced the emotional torture Luke has, seeing as Luke's foster parents were murdered and his father turned out to be Space Hitler. All Ree has had to contend with, thus far, is the fact she was abandoned by, and descended from, space hillbillies, which isn't really a big deal. But does that explain the hate? Well, no, not at all. Ree isn't the only protagonist playing through her story on easy mode, far from it. It's interesting that you always see the term Mary Sue thrown around, but rarely the male equivalent, Marty Stu. And there's a hell of a lot of Marty Stus out there. Take James Bond and Indiana Jones, both are superhuman soldiers, seducers, and puzzle solvers, flawless individuals who are the subject of intense admiration from everyone they meet, who isn't evil. They rarely suffer any emotional torment, they are simply moving from A to B, and they do it better than anyone else, because they are perfect. And don't try to tell me that Daniel Craig's Bond is a depressed alcoholic or whatever, because he's clearly the highest functioning alcoholic who has ever walked the face of the earth. Every single character ever played by Tom Cruise is a Marty Stu, while Dwayne Johnson plays Marty Stu on steroids. I never see hate directed toward them, or their characters. Why? Heck, maybe we should hate them. If we got rid of all the Sues and Stus, we'd be blessed with better stories. Flawed protagonists are always much more interesting. Political correctness is being forced into the Star Wars universe. Don't laugh. As hilarious as this idea might be, a lot of people seem to take this concept very seriously, and they are very angry all the time. So let's start by defining what exactly they mean by political correctness. From what I understand, they are talking about racial /sexual diversity, and feminist themes, specifically those which are inserted into a franchise crudely, to the detriment of the story. There are hundreds of YouTube videos, like this one, that criticizes the franchise's newfound commitment to racially diverse casting, and the increased importance of female characters. Who the heck are these people? That video I linked had hundreds of thousands of views, so clearly there's a vast audience out there with whom these criticisms resonate. So, what's their problem? How could you have such an issue with racially diverse casting, strong female characters, and not feel like a hateful person? Well, the primary complaint seems to be that these other characters are being elevated at the expense of the white guys, who are, supposedly, now mocked and vilified. Specifically, in regards to Last Jedi, they are angry that Poe Dameron's hot-headed pilot makes serious mistakes, and is chided by his female superiors, that Finn is taught life lessons by newcomer Rose, that Kylo Ren is the irredeemable antagonist, and, of course, Luke dying /Ree being too powerful, etc. They also seem to be inconsolably upset by the mere existence of these The Force is female t-shirts. Okay, fine, you can laugh now. In short, they resent that a franchise that used to be aimed at young boys is now steering toward a young female audience too. But that doesn't mean that it's steering away from them. In fact, the most interesting character in the new trilogy, and the entire franchise, as far as I'm concerned, is played by Adam Driver, who was not hired through a diversity initiative. Kylo Ren boasts the most complex, well-developed personality in the Star Wars universe. The man is cunning, intelligent, immensely powerful, and emotionally unstable. He's deeply flawed, yet wildly popular, because he's both deplorable and sympathetic. He's everything Anakin Skywalker should have been, and he represents the best of the sequel trilogy. And the sequel trilogy is attempting the impossible, because the goal is to reinvent the series for a new audience, while tickling the nostalgia glands for the old fans. It's a damn difficult line to walk, and there was always bound to be casualties. Star Wars has millions of fans with varying degrees of passion, who all have wildly different expectations for the direction of the franchise. But the loudest, most aggressive criticisms are twisting a mere dislike of the modern-day movies into something resembling a men's rights movement, which is quite frankly, bizarre. When Poe's recklessness is criticized, his masculinity is not being diminished. The old Star Wars philosophy of jumping into action without a plan, and somehow earning a medal, is being questioned. The traditional narrative is being deconstructed, and while that can be brilliant and unexpected, sometimes it's just disappointing. What was the point of Snoke, again? But then you still have movies like Solo, a Star Wars story, which totally adheres to Star Wars tradition, and bombs at the box office anyway. I've tried to give these guys a fair trial, but it is hard not to view the more emotionally charged segment of the backlash as anything more than an outpouring of poisonous, sexually frustrated sludge. Especially when you have widely viewed YouTube videos with titles like, "Women are ruining Star Wars." Real subtle, guys. So, like it or not, the franchise is changing, because the world is changing. There isn't some insidious political agenda being drip-fed into your space opera, there's just a story being directed by some Disney/Lucasfilm executives who simply want to make a great deal of money. That's it. They are not brainwashing your children, they are just trying to entertain them. And most of all, they are trying to persuade you into buying overpriced action figures.